You know what
Backpacking America
is, right?
It's fucking awesome.
It's Backpacking America, an analytical podcast. Ladies, if you're tired of your favorite nail shop being closed due to COVID-19 and you want high-end nail designs to look your best even through these hard times, then send Kimiko a follow on Instagram at Kimiko_colors. That's KIMIKO_KOLORZ, and order your very own custom set of nails. Each set includes everything you need to put your own nails on. They even ship nationwide. Oh no, another COVID-19 podcast episode. Don't worry, at least it's not as annoying as the Trump jokes from SNL for 4 years straight. Rip the writer's room that probably just lost all their jobs. Anyway, we're going to be talking about vaccine inequity. In New York City, they've realized there is a fundamental problem because white people are getting the vaccine at higher rates than black people and Latinos in the black community are the hardest hit in the state. So, oh my God, what do we do? Is what DeBlasio and Coumo said. So, the first thing they want to do is they want to get a bigger supply because the more people that are vaccinated, the more trust there will be in the vaccine. And he said that one of the issues for the reason that there is a lack of vaccination in these communities is because, and get this, he says there's no supply and there's concerns about trust and hesitancy. And that is what DeBlasio is saying. So, okay, trust and hesitancy, sure. I really think it's because they're letting people from outside of those communities come into the centers. And, you know, there should be a law put in place saying that if you're not from this zip code, you can't enter this testing facility. But that's just me. They're saying that it's mostly a trust issue. And while they do say that there are individuals outside the city getting vaccinated, about 29,000 doses were given to individuals who live in Connecticut and New Jersey, he did note that some of them are public servants, so it's okay. But there's two issues, and Cuomo goes on about this, the lack of trust and the lack of vaccine. And he said that, of course, the death rates and infection rates were double the impact than it was in the white community. He says he agreed with the mayor that, you have access to the vaccine, which is problematic all across the state, but we have significant special efforts in poor black and brown communities. And Cuomo said he was not going to receive the vaccine until it is available in poor black and Latino communities for his age group. He said that distrust of the vaccine is also an issue that Cuomo said was very real. And the one way they want to fix this is allow people with vaccination appointments to bring other eligible family members so they can get vaccinated too. Then the mayor said that one way to get past vaccine hesitancy is to ramp up supply, explaining that more people are likely to take the vaccine if they see someone they know who has access to it firsthand. So, okay. We're going to deal with the obvious and then we're going to get into the technical. Allowing people to bring other eligible family members so they can get vaccinated with the goal of showing people that it works. Now, I'm not going to lie, but when people saw government officials getting the vaccine and just people like nurses getting the vaccine on television, they were making a bunch of conspiracy theories and posts about how it was faked and how that wasn't really COVID vaccine. You don't know what's in it. It could have been water, So they're not going to believe it, even if, they see someone getting jabbed with the needle. It's not going to reinforce anything positive at all. And Cuomo kind of but he kind of contradicted himself by saying, oh, everyone should get vaccinated, but, I'm going to put myself in the black and brown community group and not get it until most of them get it. So, Cuomo, we all know you don't give a shit about the black community. Like we know that 100%. You allowed gentrification and high pricing and lack of state funding to go into like lack of state funding for the public school system in New York. In fact, the whole state, the whole education system in the whole state is segregated. In fact, New York City is the highest amount of segregated schools in the nation. So we know you don't really give a shit about the black community. So now you're going to pretend you do by saying, oh, I'm not going to get the vaccine. Now, what that tells people, you go on saying, oh, we need to trust the vaccine. We need to trust the vaccine. But then again, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to pretend I'm a black person and not get the vaccine because it's the right thing to do. No, bro, you're afraid of the vaccine. Like, that's what that says. At first, I was like, okay, that's a nice thing to do, but I forget that this isn't a communist. This is not a labor union. This is not, a community activist, trying to do the right thing. This is Governor Andrew Cuomo that doesn't care about working people. So, of course, of course he's going to say that. And that doesn't reaffirm trust because, like, oh, why isn't he getting the vaccine? Why is he pretending, that he's going to be in that black community's ratio and he's not going to get it until the most of them get it? If anything, it's just, I feel like it's a distrust that he has of the vaccine. I'm not going to lie. Another thing is that 60% of the city's vaccination sites are within those 33 neighborhoods that are poor, black, and Latino. And, there's a profound disparity that needs to be addressed aggressively and creatively, the mayor said. So how do we do that? And the way I see it, one, you can't get a vaccine unless you are at that center, unless you live in that zip code. That's the only way you could get the vaccine is if you live in that zip code. And you only make enough and distribute enough vaccine to that zip code. That way there's not all this, oh, let's send it here, let's send it there. It's like, no, bro. You want to make it equitable, only put it for that community. Because what they're also not saying, too, is that there are more than just black and Latinos in those neighborhoods. It's a majority, sure, but there's also a minority in it, too. And by expanding it by zip code, it's not only meeting the majority racial background of that community, it's also getting non-black and non-Latino races and ethnicities the vaccine. But they're also poor working people. And that is how we effectively give not only racial justice and economic justice to the health vaccine. The vaccine distribution crisis, as I like to call it, because it is a crisis. It's getting shipped all over the state, and it's not being met effectively. And while they're under a lot of pressure, understandably, there's many ways to distribute the vaccine equitably. It's just actually putting your brain to use, doing it by zip code and only enforcing it by zip code. And a lot of it again is a public disinformation as well. So of course, having to ramp up the trust of the vaccine that it's a real thing is important. It doesn't help when 29 people died in Norway from it, and that's thrown all over the news cycle. But we don't know why they died from it. Did they have underlying conditions? Did they commit suicide? Did they, people see these titles and these things, and they take it for gospel, and they take it so seriously, like this is what's going to happen. Or you didn't read the ingredients of it. I'm like, dude, do you have malaria? No? Alright, bro. So what the fuck is good? So why are you shitting on this vaccine all of a sudden? Or people say like, oh, it's like a population control thing. It's like, bro, population control, and I hate that conspiracy so much because it makes no sense. Bro, when America had slavery, they literally did not kill their slaves because they were so expensive to replace. It was like getting rid of their free labor force. Why would they do that? They didn't beat them to death. They just beat them into submission after a while. And the whole purpose of like us getting this vaccine is not to control the population or to cull it. It's to preserve the flow of capital and the productive forces of the country. The country is not doing well economically from COVID. You have a massive unemployed legion of workers that are just like looking for work and are getting pissed off, and they want to overthrow the government, and they're getting drawn into these ideological extremes. So of course they're going to want to, to get us back to work and to improve the situation, because they don't want a revolutionary situation. They don't want insurrections like January 6th. And they most importantly don't want the stock market to crash. And now we have a market uprising. We have all these people flooding the GameStop stock so that way they crash hedge funds. The ruling class of this country is terrified, and they want to solve the situation as quick as possible. But they're cheap bastards, and they don't understand that if they give a little, they'll keep most of it. If they don't give anything, they'll lose all of it. So the ruling class is trying to struggle with this and trying to figure out, because the first time in American history, the working class is class conscious, really, truly class conscious, and they're terrified. They're terrified of us, and that's why they're trying to pump out this vaccine and put people at ease, and that's why the corporations are trying to get you to vote for Joe Biden, and all these politicians are trying to get you to vote for Joe Biden to calm everyone down so there won't be a revolution, so you won't care about political rights or civil rights or government or anything. And that way they can continue their economic exploitation, the preservation of American hegemony, and when they defeat COVID, there will be nothing to criticize or worry about. So they want to get this over with as soon as possible. They want you to get the vaccine so you don't die at your job, so you can keep making money. That's the whole point. That is the whole point of the vaccine. Not for human health, not because they care about other people, but because they need to make sure the country doesn't collapse and that there's economic profit still flowing. That is the whole reason. There's nothing sinister, nothing Orwellian about it. Another thing is the tracking devices. Bro, no one is going to track. You literally paid $1,000 in November on Black Friday for a tracking device. I don't want to hear it. I think all your devices in your house are tracking devices. They listen to you. You got a smart TV? Forget it. Government's already got you. And, it's silly. It's the most logical one is we could die or get really sick. I understand the fear of that, but that's so minute, and that's a risk with every vaccine you take. Because you never know. And unfortunately, your only two options are to die from isolation through suicide, or potentially maybe die getting a vaccine that will allow you to live your life again. And, the reason why I'm really upset about going back to the race thing, I'm really upset that, our government, of course, can't, understand that locking it down by zip code is a good idea, is because when this happens again, because this is an ecological thing, and this is why I again have beef with Coumo in the city of New York, because we have Asthma Alley, we have the Brookhaven dump in Long Island, we have Staten Island used to be a massive garbage dump. We have ecological problems all throughout this state, and viruses are going to continue to spread at faster and more deadlier rates as the ecological crisis worsens. New bacteria, what happens is there's ancient bacteria in the North and South Pole, and as the ice melts, because the bacteria is in the ice, as it melts, it will thaw, and it will get into the ocean and into the air, and it will spread. It will spread into the archaeologists, into the oil miners. That's how it will start. It could spread to birds or fish, So the likelihood we're going to get another pandemic in our life is very, very likely. And if we're fucking this up still, and we're still not able to establish a workers' government, or at least a very, very competent social democracy that at least prioritizes the people to an extent, we're going to be screwed. And there's no, like with Coumo and DeBlasio, this whole article that I pulled this from CNN literally just skirts around the core issue of why are Black and Latino people not getting the vaccine, and why are white people getting it at a higher rate. They're not acknowledging racism in the health field. They're not acknowledging the fact that traditionally black and brown bodies are disregarded by health professionals. Now, of course, there is massive concerns and conspiracies against the vaccine that ignorance plays into any working class community, of course. But they skate around it by saying, oh, the black community is ignorant. That's what they're saying. They're saying, oh, we don't have enough vaccine, which we don't, correct. Oh, and the black community is largely just, afraid of the vaccine. It's not just the black community. In fact, I think every anti-vaccine post I've seen has been from white people. Of course, there are black people mixed in with that. Conspiracy theories don't see race, ironically. But this is obvious racism. And this is part of the issue why black and brown people can't get the vaccine at the same rate white people are. Because, guess what, dude? We think you're ignorant and, blah, blah, blah. The government literally just said the black community was ignorant and had no idea anything about the vaccine and that they don't trust it. Even when the pandemic first happened, they're like, oh, yeah, black people really don't care about the pandemic. They're still partying. Look at this Snapchat video. It's like, bro, I can name like 6 fraternities right now that threw parties, and they're white. It's literally across the board, but there's this blame and these assumptions by those in power that black people are uneducated, and that's the main reason why they're not getting the vaccine. Those are the 2 issues the governor and the mayor are talking about. And yes, the black community has been disproportionately affected. That's because the black community are essential workers. Latinos are essential workers. They haven't had a day off. They haven't quarantined or isolated because they all have to go to work the next day in the middle of this thing. That's why they're getting it and dying it at higher rates. If you really, 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 really want to prevent the high death rate and prevent the low vaccination turnout, what you simply do is you make sure that you pay all of your essential workers for a week. Hospital workers got to stay, but shut down the subways again. Shut down the buses. Just shut everything and make everyone stay home and give those workers the vaccine give the black community specifically the vaccine. Or, and this one probably makes a lot of sense. You shut down, you open up centers in every single zip code. You go specifically to the black community and you say, listen, make sure you get this vaccine. It's at this time. Make sure you give people, you go to the job sites and say, hey, we're setting up a vaccine clinic. Come get your vaccine. You give priority to working poor people and black people and Latinas, and you vaccinate them. That's how you stop it. Give them priority first, because if they're the ones dying at a higher rate and they're the ones with the least vaccination, give it to the black people and to the Latino community first. Then, just like saying, oh, we have no idea what to do. And if that seems too radical to you, then just go to the job site, say, listen, everyone, get your vaccine today before you go out on your shift or whatever. Or just open it up in the zip code and only let people from that zip code get the vaccine. And if you're not from that zip code, tough shit. It's really not that hard. And they refuse to skirt around that because that would seem too radical. And then, of course, to do such a thing is the supply. So even if, I don't know why my voice did that. Hold on. All right. So the supply. If you are going to do all that and you set it up in the, the workplaces and the zip code communities, you need to have supply. And yes, we do need more supply. But, I mean, we all understand that. But the fact that you refuse to even, float the idea of potential solutions to the problem. Instead, you blame the black community and the Latino community for being ignorant, and you say, oh, we just don't have enough vaccine. Oh, and the way to fight the ignorance, they should bring someone from their family, specifically another eligible person. Bro, it doesn't work like that. One, there most likely isn't going to be another eligible person in the household. Maybe one other. Two, having another person get it, say, oh, well, I got it, is not going to curb it completely. What's going to curb it is a public information campaign where not only you have people you know getting it, but there's literal science about it broken down. Or you make it a fucking law and you make the fine ridiculous if you don't get it, so everyone gets the vaccine. Or you make it required in order to send your kid to school, everyone in the household has to have the vaccine. There are so many ways to get people to take the vaccine that won't be that ridiculous. There's so many ways to do it. Now, there are some states where that doesn't exist and that's not a law, but in New York, you better believe you better get every single vaccination before you send your child to school, because they don't want a cholera outbreak at your local middle school. So just do that. It's really not that hard. There's so many, there's a lot of things that aren't being said about here. And of course, the healthcare issue, that's like, to dedicate an episode solely on racism in the healthcare industry, I think would require like a mini series, because I'd of course have to cover how, there would be forced, what were they called? Where they tie the tubes, sterilizations of Latino women, specifically Latina immigrants in Los Angeles, blatant racism and disregard of black women in the healthcare field and as patients, where their suffering and their pain, or like what they feel is wrong with them, is often dismissed as incorrect or as exaggerated, and then black women end up dying at greater rates because their concerns are ignored. I mean, it's literally, I could explain that so much more in a mini series, but this is just like the icing on the cake right now of like a great display of how the capitalist establishment does not care about black people, and that healthcare is incredibly colonized. And the only way to really fix this is to prioritize the black community and the Latino community to get vaccinations, establish vaccination centers by zip code, and only let people from that zip code have access to it, and to, of course, provide more supply and a rigorous information campaign to ensure that any conspiracies of the vaccine are refuted. That is the only way we're going to solve the vaccine issue in New York State. Thanks for listening, y'all. Make sure to give BPA a follow on Instagram at Backpacking America and Twitter at BPA Podcasting. Make sure to like BPA on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. The links can be found in the podcast description. Until then, take it easy and stay breezy.